Hey, we're talking with one of the real kings of the five-string banjo here, Don Reno. And it's a real pleasure speaking with you, Don. You put on a real fine show last night.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really enjoying myself here at this big bluegrass festival that Carlton Haney is presenting, and especially meeting all you fine DJs and folks that are associated with bluegrass music.
Mm-hmm. Who are the people that you have in your band with you now, Don?
I have Sid Campbell on flat-top guitar. Ronnie Reno, my son, plays mandolin.
How do you think he's coming along, by the way?
Well, I may be a little prejudiced because I'm his dad, but I think the boy is doing real well.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Duck Austin playing bass, and we'll be pulling a real surprise on you about a fiddle player a little bit later on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And now, questions about you yourself. How did you actually get started playing music?
Well, as far back as I can almost remember, at about the age of 5 years old, I found myself with a banjo in my hand, playing one of the old tunes that I had probably heard somebody playing. And I knew that I loved instruments and the sound that came from them. So I became solely dedicated to music at a very early age. And at the age of 12 years old, I went into the business professionally at WSPA Radio in Spartanburg, South Carolina, with a group known as the Morris Brothers, Wally and Zeke. They were very popular entertainers back at that time. Then, a little later on in my career, I went to work with Arthur Smith, Arthur Guitar Boogie Smith. And one of the records that we recorded in Washington, D.C., right after the war, I believe, we just thought we'd do a flip side. Turned out to be a 2.5 million seller, Guitar Boogie. You remember that?
Sure. Everybody does.
And then from Arthur, I went into the service, into the Horse Cavalry. I was stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. From there I went overseas to the CBI Theater. Came back and done a little bit of playing around Spartanburg again until the latter part of 1947, and I went to work with Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys at the Grand Ole Opry.
There's an interesting story connected with how you joined up with Bill Monroe. Would you like to recount it?
Well, it's kind of funny in a way. In 1943, while I was working with Arthur Smith right before I went into service, Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys came through with a tent show. Sam and Kurt McGee, Clyde Moody was working with Bill at that time, Cousin Wilbur, and Chubby Wise was playing fiddle with Bill. And I got into a jam session in the hotel room with them across from the radio station. And Bill tried to hire me then to go with him, and I told him that I was under the gun to go to service, and if I didn't go to service or if something happened that I was physically defected, I'd be glad to come to work with him.
Okay.
And I turned out to be a number one. They took me.
Wonderful.
So when I returned from overseas, I'd kind of had the thought in mind, I might go out there and work with Bill if he was still in operation when we got back. And I learned that a good friend of mine, Earl Scruggs, was working with Bill when I come home. Then one Saturday night, I tuned in the Grand Ole Opry and didn't hear the golden tones of Earl's banjo, and I says, well, now, let's see here. What's going on?
Uh-huh.
Then I heard Bill announce that he was looking for a five-string banjo picker, and I was determined to have the job. I felt like I could hold up maybe my end of the horn if I done some real intense rehearsing out behind the barn, for a while. So I pulled out for Nashville, Tennessee, and got there and found out Bill was in Taylorsville, North Carolina. So I headed back to Taylorsville.
Uh-huh.
I got into Taylorsville. I think they'd been on the stage maybe 5 or 10 minutes when I got there. So I figured the proper thing to do was uncase my banjo and go and start work. So I did, and I got the job. And it was a real pleasure working with Bill. You learn something from him that I don't think you could learn from anybody else. It's a certain type of feeling that you pick up that exciting something that he puts into you.
A lot of bluegrass musicians say the same thing about Bill Monroe. They don't know exactly what it is, but they know that they've learned an awful lot from staying with him. How long did you actually stay with him?
A little over 2 years.
Did you record anything with him, by the way?
Yes, I recorded some of the early stuff, Bill. I've recorded so many numbers in the past 10 years, I can't remember half the stuff that I recorded with my good buddy Red Smiley. From Bill, I come back to Greenville, South Carolina. I had a nephew at that time that was like a son to me. There was a guitar picker. And he wanted me to come home and organize our own group, so I did. Went to Greenville, South Carolina, and organized the Tennessee Cut-Ups. From there, we went to Roanoke, Virginia, and become associated with Tommy Magnus, an old-time fiddler, and one of the best, used to on breakdown stuff. And
did you record some gospel things with
Tommy? Yes, I did. Become associated with Red Smiley through Tommy in 1950. 1951, we left Roanoke and went to Wheeling, West Virginia, and worked up there with Toby Stroud. Then back to South Carolina, and me and Red became partners. I took him in as a partner with Tennessee Cut-Ups. And I think we worked almost a year down there, and business was real bad. We were on the side of the unknown, so to speak, at that time. And that's a very poor country to go to try to organize a band anyway.
Yeah.
The people are just not there, and the money's not there either. So we disorganized in the spring of '52 after recording 16 sides for King. And the first release come out, I think, 6 weeks after we disbanded, and if we'd stuck it out 6 more weeks, we'd have been all right. I'm using my Bible for a road map, and it was one of our biggest records. I went back to work with Arthur Smith in Charlotte, North Carolina, and worked till '55. Then me and Red organized again. Went to Richmond, Virginia, and from there to Roanoke. Spent 10 years in Roanoke. Red's health became bad. He is still in Roanoke doing the early morning TV show we started in '56. And I'm out on the road touring because I like to meet people. And Red's health just won't permit him to take the strain of the road.
And is that the reason that you finally broke up your partnership after all those years?
Yes, that's the reason. Red Smiley is certainly a wonderful guy. I enjoyed working with him. And I'll always treasure about 300 records that we made together.
Now, more specifically about the way you play. You're, of course, considered one of the finest banjo players going today by just about everybody who listens to it. Now, in your style, I guess, is somewhat different. How did you actually start the ideas with your style? You didn't really follow Scruggs exactly, apparently, and you picked up your own things. How did that come about?
Well, in the beginning, me and Earl followed the same guy, Snuffy Jenkins, Columbia, South Carolina. We played the same style. Actually, I was the first man with the style, but I went overseas, and Earl didn't go into service, and he got to the front with it first, so it was his baby. So I said, well, the only thing I can do is start another style. So I did, taking stuff from a guitar and transplanted onto the neck of a 5-string banjo.
On the background that you use for slow songs, you have an approach which is sometimes called jazzy. How did that come about?
Well, I have a certain amount of blues in me, it seems like, and when I feel something, I try to give it to people through the sound of the banjo. I just play what I feel. That's where my style actually comes from now.
What kind of advice could you give to banjo players that were starting off that maybe would try to learn some of the things that you do?
Well, they could probably learn some of the things from listening to records that we've put out in the past, or trying maybe to catch us on a personal appearance. I'm always glad to show any banjo picker anything that I can. It's actually not as hard as it sounds once you actually see it done, I guess. And learn the neck of the banjo as much as you can, so you'll know where you're at on the neck, and when you hear something from somebody else's instrument, then you know where he's at, and you can put it on your instrument.
How do you think bluegrass music should sound? What are your aims in getting the sound of bluegrass music? What do you try to do with it?
Well, I've tried to push it as hard as I could and as far as I could. I think, honestly speaking, and I'm a close watcher of the business, bluegrass is fast coming to the top. It's not reached its peak by a long shot, but I think it will reach its peak in the next 5 years. There are musicians, let's give this for instance, in New York City today that's playing 5-string banjo, mandolin, and fiddle, bluegrass style. 5 or 10 years ago, probably had never heard of it, and they like it. It's a music that gives you a feel. It'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you want to dance. There's about 7 moods in bluegrass music, and when you get your mood changed about 7 times in 30 minutes, you got a hold of a tiger by the tail, I'll tell you. That's my viewpoints on bluegrass music.
Good. Don, you are certainly one of the better banjo players around, but few people have realized the potential of your guitar playing. You don't have too much of it out on records, and you don't do it too much in personal appearances, but certainly to my ears, you're one of the best I've ever heard on the flat-top guitar, on the lead flat-picking things. How'd you pick up the style of guitar?
Well, when I started into the business, I tried to learn as many phases of the business as I could, widening my scope to the extent that I could make a living by staying in the music business. I always loved the guitar, and I learned the guitar along about the time I did banjo. It was a give and take. I liked the guitar better back then than I did the banjo. And at one time, I went to a guitar completely and forgot banjo for about 2 or 3 years. And there was one gentleman that I took under my wing at the age of 14 and taught him guitar, then worked some twin stuff with him for a while. You may have heard of him, Hank Sugarfoot Garland.
Certainly.
Of course, Hank passed me so far and so fast, I forgot about guitar picking. He's great. But we did have some fine arrangements worked out on hoedown stuff, twin style, even back in 1946. And then I give guitar up to go back to banjo. It seemed like there was more demand for a 5-string banjo than there was guitar. So,
and you stayed with it then?
I decided if I was going to have to play banjo, I might as well learn how. So I've spent a lot of time and effort and research on the 5-string banjo. I'm proud of it, and I think every American should be, because it's the only American instrument that we own that was invented and made in America.
You said you've been doing a lot of touring. Do you expect to include New York among the places you'll be going to in the near future?
Yes, I do. Definitely. I want to come to New York.
Is there anything actually scheduled there now?
Not concrete. There's some dates in the process of being set in New York. However, at the present, I can't specifically say where they're at because we're debating on some places.
Well, that's good to hear, because there are a lot of people in the New York area that are really eager to hear you and your band and your banjo playing and your guitar playing there. And we hope to see you up there in the area pretty damn soon.
Well, we hope to be up there soon, and I'd like to say this. There's some wonderful bluegrass musicians and entertainers coming from the state of New York, and I'm real proud of that.
Okay.
Thanks to you for taking up your time to interview me here on your program, and the best to you and your listeners.
Okay, thanks a lot, Don.